And if we do deity worship, if we don't chant the holy name, even the deity worship is useless. So Nam Sankirtan is life for all the other angas of bhakti that we do. So that's one point, that deity worship is within our sampradaya. At the same time, the primary element for us is Nam Sankirtan, chanting the holy name. When we come to deity worship, it is defined by scripture, particularly Pancharatric scripture. And the Sanatana Goswami, he also wrote a work called Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is a huge work. And the first part, actually, first 9 chapters or so, are about deity worship and things related to deity worship. However, it is very complex. So even the most serious follower of Lord Chaitanya doesn't follow all of those instructions. So we have a much simpler form of deity worship than mentioned in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Still, there are some primary principles we have to follow. Along with this, we have the emphasis in our sampradaya upon Raganuga Bhakti as opposed to Vaidhi Bhakti. So if you look in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a great emphasis on Raganuga Bhakti. But Vaidhi Bhakti means rules. Pancharatra also means rules. So Pancharatra, we could say, is related to Vaidhi Bhakti because of all the rules. However, we do see that the followers of Lord Chaitanya and their descendants had deities. They were also practicing Raganuga Bhakti. So the deity worship that we follow, though it is derived from Pancharatra and with a heavy reliance on rules, at the same time, it is modified by the mood of Raganuga Bhakti. We have another sampradaya. We can compare our sampradaya with other sampradayas. So most people are maybe familiar with Ramanuja Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya. There, deity worship is very prominent. In fact, much more prominent than Nam Sankirtan. In fact, maybe it's the most prominent anga they do, along with their Nitya Kriyas or whatever. And it's largely following rules, heavily relying on rules. And these rules are unchangeable. And they've been following the same rules for 1,000 years, and no one could change any of the rules. So it's a very inflexible system. So everything, the clothing and what you cook for the deity every day is defined by rules which were established 1,000 years ago, and you can't change anything. So you'll see in the Parthasarathi temple in Chennai or Balaji in Tirupati, Sri Rangam deity, they have very strict rules. And even the food they offer is very strict. There's no vegetables even, no fruits, except coconuts. Coconuts, bananas, and like I say, curd rice and idli. A few things like that. A very, very restricted menu for the whole deity for 1,000 years. And they have very, very strict rules, also their mantras, etc. So that's one extreme, which is in which they don't have Sankirtan at all. Another comparison is the Vallabha Sampradaya. They have very great emphasis on the deities. So we have the Srinath deity, very famous, and this Sampradaya actually emphasizes Raganuga, like Lord Chaitanya Sampradaya. And if the deity also is worshipped in the mood of Raganuga rather than Pancharatra and Vaidhi Bhakti. So we'll see that worship there is quite flexible. If you compare the worship in the Vallabha Sampradaya to Ramanuja Sampradaya, it's quite different and quite flexible also, because it has this Raganuga influence in it. So our Sampradaya is similar to the Vallabha Sampradaya in many ways, that we derive from Pancharatra worship at the same time, largely influenced by Raganuga. The rules are somewhat flexible, and we put more emphasis upon the creative abilities and devotional abilities of the devotee to decorate the devotee, serve the devotee. But as I mentioned, still, this is always secondary to the Nam Sankirtan. So along with the deity worship, we also have to do the Nam Sankirtan. Another point to be made is because it is following Pancharatra, in the process of Pancharatra, we have deity mantras. And those deity mantras are necessary for worshiping the deity. So when you offer the flowers, you have to chant the deity mantra. And when you offer the bhoga, you have to chant the deity mantras. Offer the lambs, you have to chant the deity mantra. This mantra is actually a Diksha mantra. This is the mantra you get at Diksha. And it's a secret mantra, and it's not a kirtan mantra. It's something you keep to yourself and you use for the deity. So the whole qualification for deity worship is the mantra. If you get the mantra, then you worship the deity. So that's actually what Diksha, the original function of Diksha was. For that, get the mantra, then you can worship the deity. So that's why in our ISKCON, also, when you take second initiation, you get the Krishna mantra. Then you can worship the deity. And before that, you're not supposed to worship the deity. So this is a carryover from this Pancharatra standard. That you're following the rules, using the mantra, and with the mantra, then you're qualified to worship the deity. So that's why that rule is there. So the rules, as I said, are somewhat flexible. And so we don't follow all the Pancharatric standards. We don't follow Hari Bhakti laws. Nevertheless, we do have to follow some standard. So in ISKCON, we also have some standards. These are established and propagated through the deity worship ministry. And also have the book put up by them. And so that gives the general standard for worshiping the deity. Based on Pancharatra, but somewhat simplified. That, of course, is generally referring to worship in the temple. And the standards in the temple are, we say, comparatively high to what one would do in the home. So therefore, the ministry is basically monitoring the standards in the temple. So we have the deity worship in the temple, which would be of high standard. And then we will have the worship in the house. Now, technically, it should be, or ideally, it should be more or less the same, somewhat simplified. And therefore, you should have second initiation with your Krishna mantra to worshiping Krishna. So that would be the ideal standard. That you don't just, anybody can just worship the deity and whatever. But you should have that mantra to worship the deity. And the mantra guarantees that you do have some standard of understanding what the deity is and how to serve Krishna. So that's one standard for the house. Also, however, we do see many people who maybe have to make a first initiation. They're also worshiping deities in their house. They may have Jagannath or Gaurnitai or something in the worship. So we do see that. Which technically, shastrically, no, it's not possible. You shouldn't do it. But we see people do it anyway. So then that's also there, breaking that rule. And then the other thing, of course, is the standards in the house are obviously going to be less than the temple. You cannot do 6 artis a day and do 6 offerings a day, etc. So the standards are much simpler, which is not really a problem because it's also acceptable that one could have 1 offering a day or 2 offerings a day or whatever, do the worship once or twice a day, whatever. Even that is permissible within Pancharatra itself. So it's also possible. So we can simplify things. But then, of course, there's also the extent of simplification. How far can we go where the worship is not really deity worship anymore? In other words, we only worship once a month, or once every 2 weeks or something, or we only pay the deity once a month or whatever on Ekadasi or something. So we have to be careful that though Lord Chaitanya is very merciful and allows us to have somewhat lower standards or whatever, we can't go too low. Now, deity worship ministry, as far as I know, has not set standards for house worship, really, absolute standards, because it's very flexible according to the person. But at the same time, individually, if you do have deities, you should try to keep as high standard as possible in the house, even though it's simple, and have regular worship and observe rules of cleanliness, etc. So that's the basic principle. But as I said, there should not be too much concentration on the deity worship, because our main type of bhakti is Nam Sankirtan. So that's our principal focus. So we can do the deity worship in the house, but that cannot occupy us fully. We do have to chant the holy name more. So we have to adjust the emphasis also. We can ask the question, well, if we have to concentrate on chanting the holy name and reading Bhagavatam, then why don't we just do that? Why do we need deities at all? So yes, technically you don't. So actually Prabhupada in the beginning wasn't encouraging people to have deities in their house. You just go to the temple if you want to see the deity. I want to worship the deity. Go to the temple. And instead of maintaining separate deities, whatever extra time you have, you serve the temple. Now, deities, of course, may be there if the person is living too far away and cannot come to the temple. Then they would have deity in their house and worship, etc. So, and that way they can have some standard of deity worship, plus carry out the regular program of chanting and reading, etc. So in the beginning, he didn't really encourage it too much if the person was living very close to a temple. But since many people aren't living close to a temple, especially because we have huge congregations now, then you could have deities in the house. But at the same time, if it's too much of a problem, too much of occupying too much time, better to concentrate on chanting and hearing and reading scripture. That's the kind of the choice we have to make. So the point about deities, of course, the other point to make is that, and of course, the other rule is not only you should have second initiation, you should have some higher standards, but deity should be installed. That's another thing. So the deity is not installed, it's not considered a deity actually. So it's more like idol worship, as Prabhupada says. So that's another Pancharajik rule. If it's not installed, it's not a real deity. It's not different from Krishna until we install the deity. Even that, of course, has some leeway for laxity, because installation itself, scripturally, is very complex. It may take 1 day or 2 days, 3 days or 5 days or whatever, like a marriage ceremony or whatever. It's very complex. And the whole idea is that unless we invoke the Supreme Lord to enter that form, it is not a real deity, and therefore we shouldn't worship it. So the whole installation ceremony is there to invoke the Lord and have him present within the deity itself. And we don't do that, then he's not there. And then so you're worshiping something, but it's just a piece of metal or a piece of wood. So that's why that rule is there. We should have some sort of installation. However, we also see that in the beginning of the movement, Prabhupada had very simple installations. In fact, it only consisted of doing an abhishek, finished, and calling the deity. We see the actual scriptural one is much more complex, with lots of purificatory rites, etc. I had a PowerPoint presentation, but we don't have a projector, so you can't see it. Anyway, there are many steps by which we purify that image. And then once it's fully purified, we call the Supreme Lord into that form. And then once he's there, he shouldn't leave. So we have to worship the deity every day so that he doesn't leave. So once we do the installation, then we're obligated to worship every day. And that way, the deity form actually is the Supreme Lord, and we're worshiping the Lord directly. So that's the original idea in Pancharatra, which should have the installation or Pratishtha ceremony by which the form actually becomes a deity which we can worship as non-different from the Supreme Lord. But as I said, Prabhupada in the beginning days, he did very simple types of installation, just an abhishek or whatever like that. Nowadays, of course, the installations are much more complex, following different scriptures. But there should be some sort of ceremony. If it is not possible, of course, then we can also follow the rule of Pancharatra that ultimately the main element, even in the Pratishtha, is devotion. So if the devotion is there, then the Lord will enter that form. So if we don't have any devotion, we do all the ceremonies of Pancharatra, etc., no devotion, then the Lord's not going to enter. So we have to have devotion. Opposite is no ceremony, but devotion. So the Lord can also enter. Possible. The Lord's more interested in devotion than rules and regulations. So if we have great devotion, yes, the Lord can enter. But usually we also do want, if we're doing deity worship, we do want to, as much as possible, follow scriptural rules. We don't want to just ignore the rules completely. So we compromise and we follow scripture. We have some sort of installation, plus we should have that devotion. And in this way, we're assured that the Lord will enter that form. You can do your worship. So once we have the installation and the Lord is in that form, we should become more serious about doing the daily service to that deity and taking us non-different from the Supreme Lord and serving him as our master within the house. So that's kind of a general introduction to the whole subject. Any questions there?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the talk. My question is based around sort of how daily worship can be done as a family. Obviously, everyone will have different commitments. With both parents working, and then both children as well busy in studies. How can we sort of go around it and make time, and while being mindful that each one of us have duties, material duties?
Well, of course, the question will come, should we have deities at all if everybody's busy? The alternative, of course, is just have a picture. And it's very simple, because no rules on that. Of course, you can also install a picture and then become a deity also, that's possible. But you just have a picture. Prophet also encourages, don't have a deity, just have a picture of Gauri time or Panchatattva, and you worship every day, do arti, whatever. This is for, the simple preaching centers and things like this in the early days. So it's gone. And therefore, he didn't have to have such elaborate arrangements, etc. And he didn't have all the cooks and the pujaris for dressing and all the people to do artis all day long, etc. Then very simple, just in the morning. And we find in many student centers in India, that's what they do. They set a picture there of Radha Krishna or Panchatattva or Gornitai, and every morning all the students come and they'll do arti and have, sing, have kirtan, etc. Have a class, do offering, and all day. So very, very, very simple worship, and they don't have to have deities or anything. When we get the deities, then of course it requires a little more work. And even for temples, it becomes a big job. So this is one of the major problems in many temples. Of course, Bhakti-Vedanta Manor, no problem because so many devotees there, but many temples do have problems getting enough cooks and pujaris. So they have to start importing it from India. It's a different place. Does it take place in other places in England? Like Birmingham or other places or whatever. I don't know if they have deities or not. But throughout Europe and Australia, for instance, other places, they're looking for pujaris all the time and cooks all the time. And so they may have to import them from India because they don't have enough in their temple. So the alternative, of course, of deities is to have a picture. And you can, whatever worship you do, fine, there's no offense or anything.
It's a bit too late, Maharaj.
Yeah. Well, before you get a deity, maybe you should very carefully consider what to do. The other thing, of course, you make a schedule. I like to do in temples also, so they have schedules. There are some places where there's no resident devotees, like in Malaysia. They have a temple, they have deities, installed deities, but no regular people in the temple. So the congregation takes, every day they rotate. Someone does the Mangalarti, somebody does the next arti, some of the next arti, somebody's doing the cooking every day like this. So they have different people throughout the day from different places coming and doing the different services. So in the family also, you just divide up the services and rotate.
Regarding to Yagya and the Homa, ISKCON devotees say our Gayatri Mantra, but generally other Vaishnavas say you have to chant the Sandhya Vandam. If you don't do Sandhya Vandam, you're not qualified to Yagya.
What type of yagya you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yagya.
What type of yagya?
Homa.
Which types though? There's so many types of yagya.
Samskara, Svashna Homa, all this.
Oh, well, of course, our sampradayas, I said, the emphasis is on Nam Sankirtan, and everything else is secondary to that. So we put Nam Sankirtan at the top, Shravanam next, Sadhu Sangha next, and maybe deity worship comes after that. Yagya would come much later after that. There's another form of worship, but it's a Treta Yuga type of worship. And deity worship was Dwarpa Yuga. So even that is a little distant from us, even the deity worship. So Nam Sankirtan is the worship for Kali Yuga. So Yagya is like quite secondary. If we look in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, we don't see it much. It's not very prominent at all. Some places like Bangladesh, they have a tradition for worshiping Garanga, etc. They never do yagyas.
How very Siddha.
Yeah, but that's of course. If we go to Madhva and Ramanuja Sampradayas, definitely they do yagyas, etc. So there are different types of yagyas also. There, of course, are samskar yagyas. These are Vedic. So if you really want to do it, you have to follow the Vedic rules. Yeah? And these are all Vedic mantras, etc. We have other types of sacrifices. Of course, there are many different types of Vedic sacrifices, like horse sacrifices or whatever, complicated yagyas. There's also the daily sacrifice, which the brahmacharis do. But I don't think anybody in ISKCON does. And then we have Ansharatric yagyas also. But as I said, with the Gaudiya Sampradaya really concentrate on that. It's mentioned in Hari Bhakti after the deity worship, you can do yagya also, but it doesn't really specify which yagya you're supposed to do, like that. Now, in other sampradayas, like Sri Sampradaya, they have many Vaishnava yagyas like Sudarshan Homa and whatever, and all different homas, etc. But it's nothing is really defined within their sampradaya for the main thing is the kirtan. That's the main yagya. So there may be, if you're going to adopt yagyas from other sampradayas, then technically you should follow those rules for the yagya.
Maharaj, I just want to know that, while worshipping deities, unknowingly we make some offenses, how we can avoid them.
Offenses to the deity.
Deity worship.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, in the nectar devotion, here's the list of like 32 offenses. Good news is that in general, they're called seva operas. Worshiping the deity, coming into the temple with your shoes on, or touching the deity when you're unclean, or shouting loudly in front of the deity, whatever those are called, seva operas. They are not considered to be serious aparas as compared to namaparans. Namaparans are much more serious. Of course, one is our main sadhana is chanting the holy names, so obviously offenses against the names would be worse. The other, of course, is that the seva aparas usually don't take place out of willfulness or not on purpose, but maybe accidentally. We may, touch an unclean item, touch the deity or something. So it's not so serious because it's not so intentional also. In any case, for those aparas, we do have verses after you do the worship. In case I've committed any offenses, you please forgive me for all this. So you have forgiveness for offense. There's verses for that after you do the worship. You can recite to ask forgiveness.
Okay, so as you were mentioning earlier, how in our line of personal deity worship is rather new aspect.
Yeah.
And similar to the Vallabha Sampradaya. At the same time, we understand our line is so different from theirs. So I was wondering, could you elaborate in what ways we are similar to them in that regard, and what ways we are different to them?
Yeah. So the similarity, because we're both derived from Raga Yoga, we give a little more emphasis upon the devotional desires of the devotee, and that we offerings, decoration, etc. It's a little more personal. It's not just defined by the rule for 1,000 years. Don't change anything. For instance, just a little example is Radharaman Temple, considered a very good standard in Vrindavan. Follow the rules, whatever. Of course, Gopal Bhatta's the source, and he's also contributed to the Hari Bhakti Vilas, so we expect them to follow all the rules. But in the summertime, they don't offer any lamps. Arti with no lamps. Why? It's too hot. Why Krishna wants to sit in front of this, in 40-degree weather, and somebody showing lamps and trying to make it even hotter. So why we should offer lamps to Krishna? It's too uncomfortable for Krishna. And so in other words, though the rules are there, they don't follow the rules when circumstances, weather, whatever, say it's not good for Krishna. So you're considering the comforts of Krishna. You may change things. So that's kind of within our sampradaya. And it carries over into ISKCON also. So similarly, we don't fan in the wintertime. We're not fanning the deity to keep them cool when it's already cold out.
I have a small question. When we do the deity worship as a part of the incense lamp, we show certain number of times the navel and the head and the whole body. So sometimes, Maharaj, if you're on our own doing arati, singing and doing together,
You can't count.
So in that case, Maharaj, what do you suggest?
Yeah. Well, these rules are there for numbers, but if we actually look at Hari Bhakti Vilas, for instance, there's no numbers at all. In fact, we don't even find a full arti there. All we get for the arti is lamps. You offer lamps. That's it. It doesn't say how many times. There are some scriptures that give a more complete list, such as incense, and lamps and cloth and conch shell and flowers, like that, bunch of 5 things. But again, it doesn't give numbers. Now, there is 2 verses from different Puranas. I forgot the Puranas. And it says you should offer the lambs 4 times to the feet, 2 times to the navel, 1 time to the head, 7 times around. And another version has 3 times to the head. Like that. So there's 2 references from some Puranas, not even quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas. And for other items, doesn't say anything. The only other reference is in Hari Bhakti Vilas. It after the doing all the bathing and dressing, etc. You take a conch shell of water and you offer 3 times to the head. That's all it says. That's about the extent. So there is no strictly defined rules for everything. A maximum we find for the lamps, the conch shell of that. If you go to Radha Govinda temple in Jaipur, and you look at that, you'll see them doing this 3 times with the conch shell above the head, so they still follow that rule. For the other items, I don't know what they do, but notice the conch shell they're doing. It's like this entire Bhakti Vilas. So there are no real hard and fast rules for that, but just to make, because people can concoct so many things, they just made some standard for everything and it's fun. So in other words, if you forget, it doesn't really matter too much.
So, Maharaj, previously I used to worship deities. Now I left my deities with my mother. So what my meditation was before having the deities, and after having the deities, I could see the transformation is that I become more attached to them, and my chanting is also simultaneously increasing because I'm getting the conscious every time I have to serve them. I have to do something for them. They are here, they are here. But when I move out, I'm just having the picture and getting the conscious down, and my chanting is also going down. The conscious I'm speaking. So is that the correct realization, or should I have to develop the mindset that I have to do chanting at any time? It doesn't matter whether I'm deities, or it is natural thing to have as a human being to serve deities and to get simultaneously increase in the consciousness while chanting?
Well, different people have different mentalities or different needs, etc. So some get more inspiration from the deities, some people may get less, and they may want to just concentrate on the chanting or whatever. So it actually depends on the person. Some for the deities are more attracted to the deity worship, some are not so much interested in that. So it's individual thing.
Raj, what should be our mood for worshipping the home deities?
The mood?
Yes.
Well, in any case, the deity is considered to be non-different from Krishna. And the whole purpose of the deity worship is to serve Krishna. So the idea is in the house, we get an opportunity to serve the Lord, like in the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, we're serving Krishna. So we get the chance in the material world to do the same thing. So you can offer garlands to Krishna, decorate Krishna, etc., just like the gopis are doing in the spiritual world.
Guru, is there a particular time that we should do it, and we should not do it after a time? Any
Do what?
deity worshiping at home?
Time.
Yeah, I mean, let's say you got date, but is there any cut-off time, like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock? Or is that
Well, generally we do in the morning rather than evening. Just like, if you get up in the morning, then you bathe and dress or whatever. So Krishna gets up in the morning and bathes and dresses and eats and whatever. So that's the main worship. Something in the morning we should do.
yeah, we sometimes get around 7:38 also.
I have a question about offering. In a home, can we offer fish, duck, rice, some people like this, some people like that, some people want lasagna.
There's no real.
We should offer to the right?
There's no real rule on that. But the only rule given in like Hari Bhakti Vilas is you offer what dear things which are dear to you, you offer to the Lord. What you consider most precious, you offer that to the Lord. And of course, it says you offer seasonal fruits or things that aren't seasonal. It also says you can address the deed according to local styles.
How do we know if our service is liking Krishna doesn't like what?
Well, whatever we do with devotion, the Lord is pleased with, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, offer me a leaf for the flower. He's not expecting too much. But he says, offer with devotion. Then I accept it.
A small example, proper bhakti in the movie.
Proper bhakti.
We get sometimes absent content, more focused on the movies, something get diverted.
Yeah, so we can't put too much emphasis on the rules. The emphasis in bhakti is on the devotion. What we're using, let's say, deity worship and making offerings as a mode for our devotion, so we follow certain rules. But it can never be devoid of the devotion. Because without the devotion and we follow all the rules, still Krishna doesn't accept it. So the rules are there to give us some sort of standards for cleanliness and regularity, etc. But at the same time, the whole idea is we should be focusing on our devotion, development of devotion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. How can we make our relationship deeper with our home deities?
How to make it deeper? Well, as I said, the main thing is to it's not that we make it more complex and follow more rules or whatever. We can have some rules, definitely. We don't want to reject the rules, but the main emphasis is upon our own devotional attitude. So we concentrate on the offering with devotion, or cooking with devotion, or dressing with devotion. And we're doing it as a service, a loving service to the Supreme Lord. Just as if you have a child, then you cook for the child. And you're not doing it because the rule tells you, or the book tells you, or the doctor's saying you have to eat so many times a day. You're doing it because you have affection for the child, that's all. And so you're putting all your love into the cooking, so offered to the child. So like that for Krishna. Krishna is the deity offering for him. So we should do it with affection.
Again, the same question according, as we do for Krishna, and say only one time Bhoga is okay, and there are two questions. One is obviously the practical question is, how much is there any minimum time one offering session should take, like all the arti and everything? And the second is, how can we do only one time Bhoga if we are all eating 4 times in a day as a child, if you feed the child 3-4 times, how can we do only one Bhoga and then welcome devotees, welcome deities in our house? We are prepared to do only one Bhoga and maybe 1 hour of worship. It should be at least 3 times, and I'm just asking.
Well, if you're cooking 3 times in the house, then each time you cook, you should offer.
Yes. Okay. That's what I meant.
Not just one time. So everything you cook in the house, you offer. Yeah. As for the arti, whatever, how long, it doesn't have to be that long, because technically the arti is like it's a welcome to the Supreme Lord. When someone comes in the house or when people come, then you come with some flowers or you offer, was it compliment water or something you do like this, and like biscuits and all this sort of stuff like that. So that's basically what it is. So Krishna's coming, and therefore we do something like that. And in no sense it's a welcome, but it technically it's like a purification ceremony, because if Krishna's out someplace and he's coming back, you want to purify the whole atmosphere around him, or purify his aura or whatever. So that's what it is. So it doesn't have to be that long, actually, because Krishna also just wants to stand there forever. Stand for half an hour, waving lamps like this, huh? Maybe we can wave at finished. So it doesn't have to be that long.
Every one of us take holidays.
Hmm?
Every one of us go on holiday.
Yes. And you have to take your deity with you. Huh? Yeah.
Are we supposed to be taking them?
Yeah, some people take their deities with them, so they have small enough deities they can take with them, and they do the worship every day wherever they are. So that's maybe the best procedure. Otherwise, you could give it to some other house. They have deities, and they can just worship together, make the offering together.
Just have one question. In the process of Krishna consciousness, we try to develop detachment for the period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But through the deity worship, sometimes unnoticingly, we get so much attached to deities. So is that a good sign, or how can we? Because every day doing arati offering, obviously we develop definitely some kind of attachment.
Well, detachment from material things, of course, that's one thing we do. As we progress in Krishna consciousness, we should become more detached. But that's the negative side. The positive side of Krishna consciousness, we become more attached to Krishna. So if we become detached from Krishna, something's not happening. You're in the wrong process. So we should have more attachment to Krishna. When it's 100% attachment to Krishna, that is prema. And there's zero attachment to anything in the material world. That's complete detachment. So we should never become detached from Krishna or service to Krishna. We should always increase that attachment. Of course, the attachment should also not be material. So we could become materially attached to our particular service for the deity because we're proud or something like that. We don't want anybody else to take that service. So that may be a material attachment. So we have to be careful with that also. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the primary devotional activity is Sankirtan.
Mm.
And my question is there a difference between the standard or the worship of Radha and Krishna and that of Gauranitai, and whether, given the Sankirtan Yajna is so important, is Gauranitai worship kind of preferable or recommended more?
So as for deity standards, Radha Krishna we consider as a more elevated worship, so therefore requires more strict standards. And that's why the deity worship ministry is a little careful about approving worship of Radha Krishna, especially marble Radha Krishna, big Radha Krishna. So one reason, of course, is we know that Gauranga Mahaprabhu is more merciful, and he forgives aparons like that. So therefore, Prabhupada also said you could have, in your house you can have Gauranitai or whatever like that. He even had these little dolls or something at once. He wanted to have people distribute everywhere because Gauranitai is so merciful. The other merciful form is Jagannath, who also was worshipped by the Sabarans, or the big herders at one time. He accepted very simple offerings from them because they were devoted, even if they were impure or low class or whatever. So therefore, Jagannath also has flexible standards, something like Gauranitai. Hmm? Okay, when is that coming in? September 18th, okay. So in September on the Purnima, that's a Bhadra Purnima, it's glorified in the scriptures, because if you, it's a very great honor, act of devotion to offer or gift a set of Bhagavatams to someone on a day. So for so many years now in ISKCON, we've been celebrating that day by distributing as many Bhagavatam sets as possible to everybody. And this way purifying ourselves and purifying the world. So in India particularly, they do this a lot. And we've been quite successful in distributing thousands and thousands of sets on that day. So you're having us thing here. What's your goal? You have a goal? How many steps?
At the moment, we have thought about 30, Maharaj.
30.
But we are working with ISKCON London.
Mm-hmm.
So they have 230 Bhagavatam for this Padapurva.
Oh.
Yeah, as a small congregation, we thought we will try at least 30 Bhagavatam.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay. So as I said, Nam Sankirtan is the main Anga, but knowledge is also important for us to attain prema. So that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he also himself was often listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, Gadadhar, Ramananda Roy, and others would be reciting, and he would be listening to Bhagavatam all the time. So it goes along with the Kirtan process of Bhagavatam. So very auspicious. If we gift it to somebody or we ourselves take it and we begin to study Bhagavatam. So just think about that. Coming up in September, think of all the people you can gift Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm coming from Mayapur and Bhanu Maharaj or Prabhu, maybe you should go and distribute to everybody the Nishingadev oil. No, but it will take a long time. We are in a rush to go. I just want to announce that in Mayapur we made a radio station. It's called Radio Mayapur. So you can listen 24-hour Bhajan Kirtan by our ISKCON devotee around the world. It's a free app. You can wake up in the morning and go to the bathroom and listen. Nice bhajan. And we also do podcasts. I do podcasts with devotees around the world. The podcast is not controversial. It's about how people at a certain point in their life, they choose to be a devotee. So we are all coming from different backgrounds. You are all from South India, easy. Rombo easy. Rombo nada. It's very easy to be devotee. But people from Australia, from New Zealand, from China, from Japan, they are taking seriously spiritual consciousness. And by hearing, at one point, somebody listened to a kirtan, they saw Jagannath Yaga, they took some prasada, somebody found in the garbage bin on PTG and took it and read it, and his life changed. So this is what we do, podcasts. We ask questions. What you were doing before, at which point in your life you decide to become a devotee, serious devotee. So that's very important and inspiring. It's an inspiration. So you can download this from Google, not Google Play, just Google, and you write Radio Mayapur. We are present in all the platforms, and we are in YouTube and all the different platforms. Radio Mayapur, very easy to remember. Okay? Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of you. Please do come and visit Mayapur. And if you have opportunity, you're in South India, please visit Chennai Temple, which Maharaj personally designed and built. It's a very beautiful temple. It's near VGP, after VGP. What is called the carry, right? Where we are in the temple?
ECR. ECR.
East Coast Road. It's a road which goes to Mahabalipuram. It's now they enlarged the road also. So please do come and visit us and spend some time together. Come to Mayapur, recharge your battery, come back and preach. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Rama Rama.
Rama Rama.
Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
Nam Sankirtan Jatya ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Vaishnavrinda ki.
Jai.
Oh, Premanande.
Hari Hari Bo.
I know an important announcement, 1 minute only. You have seen Maharaj class today, first time. Maharaj gave class in UK. He transferred in this area, but not come in UK, the very first time. Many of you have children, you named your children, and the astrological names given by Maharaj. Maharaj never expect anything from anyone. He's struggling. At least more than 150 books Maharaj translated. So if you really want to do an auspicious contribution for his travel, you can come and offer it to any one of the devotees come to play. And please, on behalf of Maharaj and distribute nursing oil, please come and take it. Anything you want to contribute, please do it immediately. Maharaj leaving shortly to Soga temple because he has tomorrow morning Bhagavatam class. So we don't want to delay Maharaj here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Donation to Maharaj. Donation to Maharaj. You can pay with the card, but tell someone to pay for you. You can pay for the person with the card. Ask Yogesh Prabhu, then you guide you.
Prabhu, you can sit there.
Thank you so much. Great person.
Thanks all devotee for joining. So we will be closing this now Zoom link and hope you